Yes. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome here on the World Wide Web. Our 30th episode today, so congratulations to us. Today we have a very, very special guest with us who is a world-renowned and accomplished flute player, and we're very excited to talk with this lady of the jazz flute, because she's bringing the flute as actually a very special instrument to the forefront of jazz. And I'll give you also a little insight to the people that uh, she has played with. She has played with the likes of Slide Hampton, Houston Pearson, Mundell Lowe, James Moody, Cedar Walton, Kenny Barron, Ken Peplowski, John Clayton, Jeff Hamilton, Bud Shank, Chuck Red, Kevin Mahogany, and Regina Carter. She currently resides in San Diego, and she is the music director for the Jazz in the Park concert series at the San Diego Museum of Art, and also she books and or consults for several jazz parties and festivals throughout the years. So the West Coast Jazz Hour with myself, Kevin Van Nelson, and my co-host Josh Nelson are welcoming Holly Hofmann to the show today. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you, sort of.
Yeah, yeah. Good to see you as well. Holly, usually when we start off the show, we would like to know a little bit of background information about you and about our guests. Could you explain us a little bit how your journey regarding flute started and how you basically got into jazz, and also how you ended up in San Diego on the West Coast?
Well, the um, the flute was an instrument that I could play as a little person. I'm only 5'2.5", so I was really little at 5 when I got my first recorder, and then at 7 I got my flute. So my parents thought maybe that was something I could hold. And my dad was a jazz guitarist. He was a chemist in his life, but his working life. But he was a jazz guitar player that worked in a lot of the community bands, and they called them territory bands in those days. When a star would come in, they would, there were guys from, I'm from Cleveland, so there were guys from Pittsburgh coming in, and that whole kind of general Midwest area there, territory bands. So we played every night together after dinner, first on my recorder and then on my flute. And at 7, I started classical lessons with Walter Mayhall, one of the premier flutists, and shortly after that with Maurice Sharp, the principal of the Cleveland Orchestra. And I wasn't really interested in classical music, but my parents said that if I was going to play jazz, I was going to figure out how to play the instrument well. So, and I learned totally by ear for years with my dad. And he had a kind of a Freddie Green style guitar um, approach. And so I got that really kind of, chunk, 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 chunk. I got that time thing from my dad for sure
Hmm.
at an early age, which really was so important. And learning by ear, before I even went to school to find out what a chord change was was also, I found out later in life how important that was. So I went to high school at Interlochen Arts Academy for 2 years, and then I have a bachelor's and a master's in flute and performance. And so how did I end up in San? Well, I knew I wanted to live on one of the coasts, but I thought New York was a little much for me after graduate school. So I I had friends out here, and I came out here, and of course, San Diego was hard to leave. The West Coast is hard to leave when you've grown
Hmm.
up in Cleveland with all the weather. I thought this was paradise. So and it was good because I got to study with some really good West Coast players, Buddy Collette and
Oh, nice.
some of the flute
Wow.
players, and then I went back every summer to study with Frank West in New York. Having a brother in New York, I got to spend the summers there and study with Frank, and that was important too. I never doubled because I worked a long time on that sound, and I didn't want to start. I had a moment in undergraduate school where the graduate conductor, who happened to be James Levine,
Oh, wow.
Cleveland Institute of Music, said to me when I was trying to play tenor, because everybody told me I would never work if I didn't double. So I was trying really hard on my tenor, and I was coming along, and James Levine said in the student orchestra that day, Madam Principal, I don't know what you're doing with your sound, but stop it.
Wow.
I stopped it. So, and then ending up in San Diego, it was a wonderful thing because I got to play uh, fairly soon after I arrived with Mike Wofford, Bob Magnuson, and Jim Plank or Sherman Ferguson, when he could come down from LA. And they were on my first two recordings. So for Capri Records.
Right, right. That's a great
Hi,
band.
Capri.
Yes. Great label.
That's it in a nutshell.
Wow. Yeah, and I read also in your biography that besides Frank West, Slide Hampton was apparently also a very important figure in your, uh, let's say, jazz upbringing.
Well, he was, and when I was in graduate school, he came to my school, and he had a long talk with me about my. Um, I was being told a lot then again that if I didn't double, I wasn't going to work, and he said, "Don't you ever do that. When you come to New York, we'll work on things. You'll go to the sessions." Slide and Frank were very good at taking me to sessions where I was ready to cry at some of them, but you know, that those were the days when that was part of the thing. It was like a cutting session. They'd see
Mm.
me coming and say, "Oh, we got a little player from the West Coast." And but Frank did a good thing for me, and Slide. I mean, they gave me confidence, and they took me there and played with me at those sessions. But the thing about that was, you have to learn the jam session tunes, and Frank taught me all the Charlie Parker heads at all tempos. And when I thought I knew one, then he would say, "Okay, let's play it in another key."
Hmm.
So,
Oh boy.
like, yeah. So that was so valuable because they don't really do cutting sessions anymore, do they? I
Eh,
mean, jam sessions, but nobody's really trying to
right.
blow you off the stage.
Yeah.
Well,
The,
sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Oh,
yeah. The last ones I went to were in New York some years ago, but yeah. That felt like a true cutting session, you know.
yeah. Well, they felt like a true cutting session to me.
Yeah.
Because they'd ask me what I could play, and then they would say, "Oh, okay." Uh, and then whatever the concert key was, or whatever the standard key was, they would say, "Okay, let's do it in B. One, two, one, two,
Oh
three." Yeah.
gosh.
I
Yeah,
mean,
there you
just
go.
just brutal.
That is pretty brutal. Wow. That's yeah. That's something I try to get my students to do is learn, more of the lyric based standards, for especially pianists working with vocalists in other keys. But it's
Oh, yes,
so good to learn bebop heads in other keys, and that is a whole other beast.
that
My
is a whole
goodness.
animal unto itself. I know.
Wow, that's great. Well, thank you so much for being here, Holly. This is really special. The connection, you know, that we have. Well, one of the first things I remember doing with you, or actually playing with you, was Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival. We did a couple things up in Idaho, I believe.
I had
Yeah,
forgot. Yeah. Oh, yes.
we played in
Um,
like a studio for a
Grace,
radio show or something.
yeah, with Grace Kelly, and
Grace Kelly, right?
it was a It was like a women in they wanted women artists at the university to come and record on the radio station. Yeah.
Right.
Gosh, I
So
forgot about that.
I know that's going back some years now, and uh, the connection there, of course, is John Clayton, who we're all. I've been a student of his, whether I'm actually studying with him or just listening to him talk or whatever. He was a early guest on our show with
Well,
Kevin.
and with John, you're always learning.
Always.
Yes.
Yes. So I thought I'd lead off with a song that he wrote from this fantastic record. Sometimes we have to go hunting for music, but Holly sent me some of her older work, but they're just fantastic. And this one, Low Life, on Capri Records, is so great. I've been really enjoying it because these are also some of my favorite musicians as well.
Yep.
Anthony Wilson on guitar, and Mike Wofford, your husband, who we just recently interviewed, and John Clayton on bass, and Jeff Hamilton on drums. Just a fantastic band. And
Couldn't get anybody.
Couldn't get anyone
Yeah.
good.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah. So I thought we'd start off with the John Clayton composition on here, Cedar Wood. Cedar Wood, which I love the name, Would. Yeah.
And he wrote it for me as a tribute to Ray and Cedar.
Very cool. It's a great tune. Yeah, the whole record's fantastic. But I thought we'd listen to this one first. So we'll start off with Cedar Wood by John Clayton on Holly Hofmann's 2014 Capri release, Low Life. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and enjoy the music. Yeah, what a
Can't
fun
play with that
tune.
rhythm section. You can't play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what a fun tune. My goodness. And such a you're such a giving band leader, to solo last. Everyone had it. I love that you suggested this one. I was actually going to pick it anyway because it's such a great showcase for everyone in the band.
Well, and they're
Um,
all West Coast artists, so
right, and they're all very
and with the
good.
show, guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
How did you?
Well, tried to
Oh, go ahead.
on that album. I tried to, and
Yeah,
on all my albums, I try to, make the solo order different, and it just happened to be, you know,
that's
I
nice.
think it's
Yeah.
better for the listener,
Oh, sure.
don't you? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and the trades with John and Jeff are great. It keeps you
And
engaged through the
Jeff was
whole.
doing his Billy Higgins thing,
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, I was gonna say that sounds exactly like him uh, playing through the spirit of Billy Higgins on the recording. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And by the way, I was at the studio you recorded this at today. I was at Tally
Oh,
Sherwood's, and he
Kelly.
says hi.
Oh, great. Well,
Yeah.
what a talent he is in the studio.
Yeah, I've done a
He
lot of
makes it
my.
so easy for everybody.
Everyone loves him. He's just so easy. He knows how to get the best sounds, make everyone feel comfortable. I've done many of my albums there. Best piano in
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think so? Yeah.
It
Mike loves the
is.
piano.
It's Mike likes it.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And you're gonna, you'll be playing the Athenaeum piano when
Oh,
you come down
that's
June.
beautiful.
And that's Mike's favorite piano in town.
Yeah,
It,
that's a good one.
it, you pianists have
Fantastic.
to take what you get. So
Yeah.
when you get a good one,
Sometimes I bring a keyboard as a backup
yeah,
in case the piano is so bad. You
yeah,
just never know for
I know,
gigs
I
sometimes.
know,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So, had you guys? You all obviously knew each other, but how did you put this particular recording together? How did you select the songs? Did you work on arrangements together? Tell us a little bit about the pre-production of it. I'm just curious.
Well, um, I was getting ready to do another album for Capri per a lovely contract we had,
Hmm.
and and I researched, that was alto flute, and so I wanted to do an all alto flute project, and that and for those non-musicians, alto flute is in another key from the C flute, which is the regular flute that you see flutists play. And so I really had to immerse myself in alto flute for the 3 months before the album. I played everything on alto because
Hmm.
it's not only just the key, but it's just a different animal. It's
Mm-hmm.
the large bore, it has limited scale options in some ways, and um, it's just different. So,
Yeah.
I thought this would be a great. I couldn't find any other all alto flute jazz recordings, so I thought this would be a good thing, you know. And then, of course, it just. Uh, I had done quite a number of my recordings in New York at NOLA, and this one, uh, the CEO of Capri, Tom Burns, said, you know, let's try to keep this one with West Coast. And of course, these guys are all my friends, and we've played together many times. And I just said, oh, West Coast, okay, I have the band. And the guitar, you know, piano and guitar, as you know, Josh, isn't always a given.
Right.
People playing together well.
Yeah.
And Mike and Anthony, we had very little rehearsal, and Mike and Anthony were like they'd played together all their lives, because you know how people get in each other's way with those chordal instruments. It can be kind of a nightmare. They were just amazing.
Yeah, I learned.
Everybody was amazing.
Yeah, it's a fantastic album. I highly recommend folks check it out and purchase it. I learned how to play with a guitarist with three guitar players: Anthony Wilson, Graham Decter, and Larry Kuntz.
Oh, well.
And they all are just geniuses in their own right, but all have very different, of course, styles and way. That's a really good, interesting topic, Holly, that we've gotten into it. Actually, Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival, Graham and I taught a workshop on pianists and guitarists playing together and some tips and tricks. But it was a learn as you go, because I'm still, you know, still figuring it out. And people would ask.
Every guitarist is different.
Exactly. So. Yeah. But those guys are just, their personalities are so giving and open. So it was just, I could see Mike and Anthony and hear it just totally working together.
They never even worked out who was going to play behind whom.
Right.
It just happened, and it was perfect.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thanks. That's
very lucky to have them.
Yeah. Great album.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Kev, you want to show our next track?
Yeah. Let me see what I was planning to show.
Follow that.
Follow that, exactly. Yeah. Yes, I actually am going to play a song from a record that wasn't actually on your list, Holly, because I found this record that you did with Bill Cunliffe's Sextet, live at Rocco's, which is featuring you, and it has, besides Bill Cunliffe on piano, Joe LaBarbera on drums, Jeff D'Angelo on bass, Chuck Manning on tenor, Clay Jenkins on trumpet, Andy Martin on trombone, and then yourself on flute. And it wasn't on your list, but I thought like, oh, this is actually a really, really cool recording. So I'm gonna play a little bit off of Ain't Nothing New, which is a Thad Jones composition. So we'll listen to that first, and we'll talk a little bit after that. I'm gonna share my song with you guys. I haven't done that just yet. So here we go. Just a little excerpt of Ain't Nothing New. I thought to stop it there after your solo, Holly, and after Bill Cunliffe's
That,
solo. Um,
yeah, that I
yeah,
forgot about that
yeah,
recording.
yeah. It's a great band. I've listened to the entire record, and it's a really nice live recording that you can actually look up on Spotify for people who are
and
interested.
and more and more great West Coast players
Yeah,
on there.
yeah, absolutely. I was pretty much interested in who are of influence to you, specifically also towards looking at just the flute as an instrument. We've talked already about Frank West and Slide Hampton being musical inspirations to you, but I'm curious for like your solo vocabulary and that kind of stuff, and your approach to the instrument. Who were some of your inspirations?
Well, I have to say, in my early life, there weren't really that many jazz flute records.
Yeah.
And, my dad listened to a lot of big band records, and small group, but I used to try to play along with the trumpet solos. Uh, in fact, at James Moody's wedding, Mike and I played Moody's wedding, and at the church part, and I was talking to Diz at the because he would walk Linda Moody down the aisle, and he said, "You know what? You sound like way more like a trumpet player than a flute player." And there's probably a reason for that, just because. I mean, there were other players that stuck out to me in Johnny Hodges. I loved, and I could always pick out Johnny Hodges solos if I wasn't looking at the recording. There were certain players, but I didn't a lot. There was Paul Horn, but
Hmm.
he was getting into electronics then, and
Yeah.
um, there weren't a lot of flute players that I had the opportunity to listen to, and and then a lot of the flutists that I heard weren't approaching the flute. Even Frank West wasn't approaching the flute the same way he did his tenor.
Mm.
And I heard the flute, I guess because of my upbringing with dad and the recordings. I was hearing the flute as just another jazz horn. I didn't hear it in that kind of playing over the top, kind of pretty frilly, you know, style at all. And I always asked Frank why he didn't play his flute the same way he played his tenor, and he said that he was the first person to with Basie that got to play flute with a big band.
Mm.
Um, and Basie let him play flute solos, and that was kind of what they were playing then, and that's the way he heard the flute. But he
Ah.
but he didn't he didn't teach me that way. He knew that I was going for the just another jazz horn,
Right.
and that's what I've tried to make it in my whole career. I don't hear the flutistic part of it in jazz as much as I hear the horn quality.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Being an ex-trumpet player, I can I can totally hear what you're talking about
I didn't
with
know
that.
you were a trumpet player.
Yeah, well, I don't go around admitting it to people, right?
Well, you're doing it now on Facebook.
Yeah. I'll make an exception. It's the 30th episode.
Yeah. Some jazz gossip about
Yeah,
Josh
right.
Nelson.
I definitely don't play it anymore.
Somebody's gonna hand you a trumpet on the next gig,
Oh
Josh.
yeah,
Right.
right.
That's
Well,
going
when
to
I
be me,
was
Josh.
yeah,
That's going
right.
to be
When I
me.
was playing back at this jam session, wasn't really a cutting session, but it had elements of it. At the Mint in West LA over a decade ago, Kevin Canner was the leader, who we all know is a good friend of mine and great drummer and just hilarious guy.
Plays
And
trumpet as well.
and he, because I would bring my trumpet, he's like, I want to play that, and he bought a trumpet, and we would. Someone would get up on drums and we'd play. He always wanted to play Bag's Groove. That was the tune. And so that was fun, and I got my chops back up, yeah, because it was marching band instrument from back in high school. So,
Oh,
yeah. Anyway, that's
What
interesting.
was Hubert Laws? I'm sure that
Oh
Hubert
yeah.
Laws was already around when you were
yes,
working.
I love those CTI recordings with Freddie Hubbard.
Right, right, right,
And
right.
I had a band in college that we did a lot of those arrangements. Um, and yeah, and then Hubert had a whole different thing. I mean, Hubert could really burn, but he was more into making, some of those classical pieces that he played, um, that he made into jazz arrangements and things. That was kind of his thing then. But
Hmm.
yeah, and he didn't, he had the pure flute tone, which I liked. A lot of the doublers, after I found out how hard it was to double without losing your classical sound,
Hmm.
I don't know how those doublers do it. I mean, it's and maintain a great sound.
Mm.
So um, that was very impressive. That he was a real flute player. He wasn't playing tenor.
Yeah, yeah. Because besides you, the only person that comes to mind who's around playing jazz flute now, well, there's what's her name? Pinder Hughes. Uh, that's her last name. I forgot her first name.
Mm.
She plays with Christian Scott
Okay.
and snap. I forgot her first name. If anybody on the Facebook knows,
Out here on the West Coast.
no, she's a New York lady. Yeah, I think it's like Helen or Elena Pinder Hughes, something like that.
Oh,
But it's basically, to my knowledge, it's you three who are putting the flute on the forefront as a jazz instrument. I was also curious if you were familiar with Herbie Mann. Herbie Mann used to be as to my knowledge also just a pure flute player who wasn't doubling.
well, he did double in the early years,
Ah,
but
okay.
uh, Herbie was a more commercial player than, I mean, his Memphis Underground and some of his history of, that was like a hit for him. And
Hmm.
so when I heard him live, and we played a few, flute summit kinds of things, um, and he he had that kind of a little more commercial approach, and that's not what I was going for then. So I didn't spend a lot of time listening to Herbie, but he was one of the guys. I mean, he was one of the flute players
Mm-hmm.
that brought the flute more into the fore. And it always amazes me, even to this day, people will still tell me, well, I just never considered flute a jazz instrument. I
Mm.
think it more of an orchestral instrument, and I think it's because we're having trouble thinking of flute players. I mean, there aren't that many, and so
Yeah.
and playing jazz in that idiom that we're talking about.
Right.
Um, so so it I think it's just, Frank always thought it was just because people didn't have an opportunity to hear a million saxophone players like they did, and trumpet players and guitar players, and there just weren't that many.
Mm.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
didn't it didn't become part of their, listening experience.
Right. Right. So because in jazz it's not a very common instrument, but I hear it quite often in Latin American kinds of music.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if you're also playing music of that kind of style, or if it's mainly jazz that you are playing.
Well, we had Mike and I were in a Brazilian band here for a while with
Uh,
great guitar player Peter Sprague, who lives here in
oh
San
yeah,
Diego,
of course.
and uh, and Duncan Moore, and really wonderful players.
Cats.
Uh,
Yeah.
and Tommy Eros, who just retired from Luis Miguel's band, and uh, so we played quite a bit. Well, it was all Brazilian then, but
Hmm.
I also played, in different settings at, like at the NFA, the National Flute Convention. They had Latin jazz ensembles, and so I've done a little bit of that, and I try to make it real. It's you have to study that music.
Hmm.
Right.
They you have to figure out the timbal and the clave, and to really get it. So you have to put in more time than I did.
Mm.
Right, right. There was a one other question that popped up into my mind, putting together the recording that we just listened of yours with Anthony Wilson and John Clayton and so forth, and that this one where uh, uh, you're actually featured. That's basically how the recording is described. Bill Cunliffe Sextet featuring Holly Hofmann, and I'm a little curious if we can dive into how you blend so nicely with the rest of the horn players, but also you're blending with Anthony on the head of cedar wood on the previous recording, because you're to my knowledge you're quite exposed as a flute player because you're pretty much in a high register most of the time. Um, so I'm curious what your thoughts or what your approach is to blending together with other horn sections or even other instrumentalists that aren't horn instruments.
Well, the flute is usually in those instances is usually the top voice. So in the case with Anthony, I was playing alto flute, so that really was Tally Sherwood that brought the flute to the fore there, because the alto flute is not a loud instrument. It does have you know it has a special lower sound which doesn't always speak in an ensemble
Right.
without a certain amount of amplification. But in like on Bill's recording and the other things that I've done with Bill with horns, um, it's a matter of pulling up that classical training and having that core sound that speaks. Core is everything in a horn sound, and
For
so
people who don't know really what you're talking about, can you explain that about what you mean with core?
well, you unless you're doing something kind of ethereal, you don't really want an airy kind of sound. You want to have
Ah,
a tone, a core tone that is there um, and can cut through the rhythm section. Many times I've had the experience of having a very bad sound man that was always trying to give me too much reverb, and I felt like I was playing in a mausoleum or something. It was just awful. So I'd say turn off the sound. I'd ask the drummer to go to drums or at least light sticks, and we'd play in a hall acoustic.
right.
So that requires core. That requires not just playing over the top. You have to really put airspeed through the horn to make the core sound.
Right, right. That's something that I wasn't familiar of, so it was also for myself being part of the uninitiated, basically.
And of course, one of my favorite flute trivias is that it takes more air to play a flute than any other horn.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that definitely. We also have some people looking on the live feed, and one of our regulars, Margaret McKay, she's a fan of the show. She's writing, "My husband wonders if you guys have thoughts on Jeremy Steig." I have no idea who that is.
He was one of the yeah he was one of the record flute players that did a few recordings, and
Hmm.
he was a flutist. He played saxophone also, but he was one of the cats. He was bringing the flute into the fore, uh, especially a few years back. But yeah, I didn't have any. I didn't own any of his recordings, but I always, when I heard him, I was always impressed because he had a real command of the instrument.
Hmm. This is
I haven't heard
interesting.
that name for a while.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's the first time for me that I'm hearing that name, so I should check some stuff out.
Yeah.
Um, Josh, you wanted to say something?
Oh, I was just as we were talking, I was thinking of some other current flutists that I've heard and I even played with. San Diego's own Lori Bell, who's
Oh yeah, of
fantastic,
course.
Lori, and then also Nicole Mitchell. I
Yes,
remembered who I saw do an Eric Dolphy tribute not too long ago. Interesting
yes,
player, very very different.
yeah.
But
Uh,
yeah,
her a little bit more avant-garde
yeah,
playing is
hmm
really stunningly
yeah.
beautiful.
I was just blown away by that element
Yeah.
in her playing when I saw her. I was like, wow, that's just. And then our friend from San Diego, Norm Swanberg's here.
Oh,
Norm,
Norm.
yeah,
Norm is a
and
big flute fan too.
yeah, he says Joe Farrell was a pretty great doubler.
Yep.
He was a fantastic. I think he was the best doubler,
Yeah, that's a really good point,
because he
Norm.
never lost that core sound.
Right.
And also one of the rare guys that played his horns the same. He didn't
Mm.
change to a different style for the flute,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Good point.
and that was yeah, boy, that may have been my favorite of all time in terms of I didn't have recordings at an early age, but every time I heard him I just thought, wow,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and
I,
stylistically he had everything going. He could play anything.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I'm aware of this recording that's under Elvin Jones's name, the Elvin Jones Trio with Joe Farrell and Jimmy Garrison,
Yeah.
um, where Joe plays tenor and flutes also, and he sounds amazing on it. And Elvin also, to my big surprise, doesn't take any prisoners. It just plays as loud as
And he
you know, like
played,
when Joe Farrell is playing flute or tenor, it doesn't make any difference, because Elvin is just bashing,
yeah.
um, putting it together. I think that trio record is called. It's
Well,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Good record.
When Mike and I are on the road and we're playing with a different rhythm section than usual, Mike always says to the drummers, "Now this, don't keep picking up the brushes. She likes wood. Don't think you have to change because it's flute."
Yeah.
Right on,
I
right
think
on.
a lot of times right away they start tiptoeing around, and
Yeah,
gradually they become more,
Right.
yeah,
right. That's good. That's good to know. That's
yeah.
always good to know.
And
As being a
just for
drummer
your
myself.
yes, and just for your information, drummer Kevin,
Yeah.
I like those nice dry cymbals. Yes.
Noted. Duly noted. I have to buy myself some dry cymbals because mine
Uh-oh.
are not
Sometimes,
particularly
well,
very dry.
some, well, some cymbals get into that to the flute range, and if you're
Right,
Mm.
playing without amplification, it can get a little bit in that
Yeah.
range, and it's not the best.
Right.
But
right.
I always, yeah,
Right, and that speaking of that, looking at the two recordings with Jeff and Joe, it seems that their cymbal sound and their sound overall doesn't compromise your sound whatsoever. And I know that Joe has like a little bit of a higher cymbal sound than what Jeff plays with,
yeah, of
but
course, yeah.
still, it's how should I put it? It's really that they're complementing your sound instead of like when you're playing with higher cymbals who are actually interfering
Right,
with your register. I can
and
totally understand that.
they're both masters at picking the right sound for the
Right,
instrument.
right, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I love both of the recordings and both of their sounds and how they're playing around with the band. So yeah. Josh, should we continue with
Yeah.
another recording?
One more flute player mentioned because she's here and I love her. We're good friends. We go back a long time. Rebecca Kleinman. Do you know her,
Oh
Holly?
yeah, yeah.
Yes. Rebecca
Yeah.
studied a little bit with me,
I
and then
thought maybe she did.
yeah,
Yeah.
and big talent and
Yeah.
wonderful person, and
Sure
yeah, I
is.
didn't know you had played with her, Josh, but
Yeah. Yeah. A long time
tell her
ago.
hi.
Yeah, I will. Hi,
Hi,
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Thanks for being here.
She's kind
Yeah.
of a Brazilian expert herself.
Exactly. Yeah. She was. I just did an interview with this great guitarist. You probably know him, Chico Pinheiro,
Uh-huh.
and she was on for that. And she's
Yeah.
totally a devotee of Brazil and has done all her
Yeah, I could
homework
tell as
there.
soon as we started working together a little bit on the flute, her, her Brazilian abilities just soared.
Yeah.
That was her thing, and I mean, she could play jazz, bebop too, but that was her thing,
Yeah.
and still is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recognize that name from your interview with Chico from last week.
Yeah, Rebecca, yeah.
Did you have Chico? I missed that. Oh,
I'll send you it. Yeah,
okay,
it was
great.
fun. Yeah, he's a joy. We had a great time. Yeah. Um, I was just thinking of another record that I remember first thinking wasn't really a jazz flute player, but it introduced me to what crossover classical jazz music sounded like. I'm sure you know it, the Suite for Flute and Jazz Piano, Claude Bolling. I was
Mm.
so into that album, and I got the piano music, and I was like, "Wow, you can do this!" I thought it was so
Interesting,
clever.
interesting about that piece. Everybody asks me to play it,
I'm
but the
sure
interesting about that piece is that there is no improv for the flute
for
on the
the
whole
flute,
album,
right? It's all written, right?
and so
Yeah.
yeah, that was just kind of amazing to me. I from one of my graduate recitals, I played a piece from that, and I just put a, a improv section
Solo,
in it.
yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
For a young jazz listener who hadn't
Yeah.
really done anything, I was like, "Oh, this is a nice way to kind of get introduced
Well,
to."
Bill Cunliffe and I did. We played as a duo for 12 or 13 years, and we did a lot of in our live concerts. We did a lot of classical and jazz combined in one
Oh,
show.
he's so good at that, as
Some of
I'm
the
sure you
duet.
are.
Well, he's one of those guys that can sit down and play, Rachmaninoff too.
Yeah.
Hmm.
In addition to being a great player and writer.
Yes, he's something else. I had the pleasure of studying with him a little bit, and just love the man. And speaking of Bill Cunliffe, you sent me a track that I would love to share, and it's from the record you did with he and Regina Carter, Three's Company.
Yes,
Yes, from 2009. Is that correct? Somewhere in there.
somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. I have to get this album. It's so great. I'm a Regina Carter fan, a Bill Cunliffe fan, and a Holly Hoffman fan. So it's a
Well,
really good album.
I
And
just
this,
What a
ordered
treat.
I just ordered some more of those from the record label, so I'll send it to you.
oh, good,
Yeah.
excellent. Yeah.
It,
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's so great. So
and
this is,
that was recorded at NOLA in New York too.
oh,
Mm.
Mike,
nice.
Mike's most favorite pianist. It was Errol Garner's piano in that
Wow.
studio. So I think it was a Steinway B, if I'm
It's
not.
got a really sonorous sound on this
Oh,
recording. It's gorgeous.
I know. And of
Really.
course, Regina is one of my best friends. So
Uh,
having been on the road with Ray Brown, we became fast friends just to survive.
wow. She's awesome. I've played with her husband, Alvester Garnett, quite
Alvester.
quite a bit.
He's on
Who's
that same. He's on that same album.
oh
Alvester did a duo with us,
oh
trio with us.
great. He's an amazing guy too. Wow, what a
Yeah,
power couple.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna listen to, and this is Mike Wofford's arrangement of "Star-Crossed Lovers" by Billy Strayhorn,
Great.
right? Oh, okay. So we'll listen to a little bit of the melody in, and then maybe do a little fade out because it's 9 minutes, but it's a beautiful 9 minutes. But we'll
Yeah,
we'll cut it a little short
yeah.
so we can hear
No,
more
I, I,
tracks.
I sent it because the combination of the alto flute and violin I thought was really special.
It is. Yeah.
And
Thank you. Yeah.
of course,
Thanks.
the writing is, Mike.
Oof.
And well, and the thing about Billy Strayhorn, I always say, is that, you know, all the right notes for improv are in the melody. You don't
Mm.
really need to do much with Billy Strayhorn
I
compositions.
couldn't agree more, Holly. I love his writing. Yeah, he's one of those composers when I don't know what to play, like sound check, Billy Strayhorn tune,
Yeah,
because it'll just something's gonna happen right.
right, right, right.
Yeah, you don't have to do much else. That's a really good point. Okay,
Yeah.
so here we go. Star-Crossed Lovers featuring Holly Hofmann, our very special guest today, from her record Three's Company, with Regina Carter on violin and Bill Cunliffe on piano. And we could keep listening to that, but it's only halfway done.
Yeah.
But what a beautiful rendition of Star-Crossed Lovers.
It's,
Regina Carter tearing it up as she always
it's
does.
that, it's, uh, and that piano.
Oh my God. Sounds like an orchestra.
Yeah.
The way it was recorded and just obviously the instrument itself, and Bill's touch. I mean, the genius at work, you know. Yeah, and you're
Absolutely.
beautiful playing on the beginning too. Just the way you two intertwine. Oh, I just love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a special recording. And now, of course, Nola's no more because Jim Zak is, the fabulous recording engineer. Jim Zak is one of those recording engineers that could dial in my sound in about 30 seconds.
Oh, really?
He just had those kind of ears.
Yeah.
That's why everybody recorded there,
Right.
for years.
I never got to do anything there. Wow. Well, thanks. I was gonna bring up a question about Bill, but you kind of answered it earlier. Your relationship with him. I mean, how far back do you guys go now, playing wise?
Well, we haven't played recently, but we played and toured as a duo for about 12 years,
Wow.
15 years. And big stages and little stages. It was just a duo, except for that recording. But we did. It was it was a powerful duo because we had a lot of. Well, Bill's writing was exceptional. We both wrote for it, but Bill primarily, and we did a lot of half jazz, half classical stuff, and it was a series we did for Azeka Records in Cleveland. Just Duet. Just Do It.
Yeah.
Several volumes of that. So
Wow.
I got the gist of it that the recording that we just heard is really on the cusp of jazz and classical, which is amazing that you guys pulled that off in that way that you did on the recording, because you would kind of say that it's the perfect balance between jazz and classical, the best of both worlds almost in that on that recording. So that makes a lot of sense.
And Strayhorn has a lot of classical kind of approach to some of his compositions, I think, too.
Yeah.
And then the combination of those two instruments,
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Regina and I have talked many times about, a lot of people tell her that they don't think violin is a jazz instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But of course, there are many more. The history of jazz violin is much more dense than
Right.
flute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you. That was beautiful. Kevin, do you want to?
Yeah. We spoke a little bit prior to going live, and you mentioned just your relationship with Ray Brown for a little bit. So I would like to show an excerpt of your Live at Birdland record with, again, Bill Cunliffe on piano. Yep, there it is. Victor Lewis on drums and the great Ray Brown on bass, legendary Ray Brown. And there was this one tune that really caught me, and it was "Taken Off Driftin'" by Herbie. And I would like to play a little excerpt of this. So this is from Holly Hofmann's Live at Birdland album, "Taken Off Driftin'" by Herbie Hancock. Ray solo?
Ah.
And so forth, and so forth, and
Oh.
so forth.
So
Man,
good.
that is some swinging shit. Excuse my
I was
profanity,
I
but
was saying,
that was some
Kevin,
good. That
I was thinking of Victor's Pocket in that. Ray and
yeah,
Victor together.
yeah.
Wow.
And this is the first time that I'm hearing an album with Ray and Victor actually together, and I was listening to it and I was like, my God, their hookup is just insane.
They're
You couldn't get anybody good for this live recording. Um, but I was actually quite curious about your relationship with Ray because you have worked with him extensively, and you know, John Clayton is basically a prodigy of Ray, and you know, the line of like teacher student is pretty obvious here in this company. Um, so, could you tell us a little bit about your relationship with Ray and how what he meant to you through your musical development and that kind of stuff? Holly might be a little
well,
frozen.
it would take
You're
me
back.
hours to talk about his influences and what I learned from him, but it was just is is it? I had a little Wi-Fi thing there, I think.
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
okay
but we
now?
can hear you.
Video's frozen, but we can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, you're
Ah,
back
you're
now.
back.
Ray, it, it was all kind of a bet that happened. He was playing here at a club that I booked for 7 years in downtown San Diego, and he was there with a trio, and we went golfing, and because he belonged to La Costa up in north of San Diego, and we had a chipping and putting contest, and he could hit the ball a long way and I couldn't, so we had a chipping and putting contest. And I said, and he loved to bet, and I said, well, I have no money, so I can't, bet. He says, well, let's do this. If you win, I'll play the gig of your choice with you. And I went, oh. So so I won, and it was about that time that my then agent Tony Sodati was talking to Lorraine about uh, Lorraine Gordon from the
From the
Vanguard
Vanguard.
about bringing the quartet in. And she said, well, it's got to, because people aren't going to know, it was the mid 90s. And she said, people aren't going to know Holly enough in New York. But if she brings in a heavy hitter rhythm section, I'd love to have her. So I called Ray and he said, yeah, I'll do it. And then I called Kenny Barron, with whom I had worked a number of gigs, and Victor Lewis. So we did 3 years at the Vanguard
Wow.
with that group, and then we moved over to Birdland after that for a while. And he was just happy to be a sideman. But as I said to you before the show, working with Ray, he was never really a sideman. He pretty much ran the band, and I learned so much from him. And he took Regina Carter and I on tour in Europe. And I remember the promoter, when we got off the bus, said, "You brought me what?" Flute and violin. I told you tenor and trumpet. And Ray said, I can get back on the bus right now.
Right.
I don't tell me who I'm bringing. And it worked out great. I mean, we played a lot of festivals, and he was ready for something different, and he just said, this is a good opportunity for you to get known in Europe, and he was just so kind and supportive.
Mm.
And I'm assuming that there
And
was a piano bass also involved with the tour with you and Regina. Do you remember who played
that
piano
one
and
was
drums?
that that was Larry Fuller and George Flutist,
Oh,
the
flutist. Yeah, killing.
Chicago drum. hmm Yeah, and then he had guests. Kevin Mahogany sang, uh,
Wow.
Yeah.
and Nicholas Payton was the other horn. So it was the trio, but there were guest spots all through the concerts. So
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds it's true what you're saying that Ray can make any gig his gig because as soon as he starts to play the first downbeat in that tune,
I
it's
know.
like, like enough said,
Well, and also
basically.
he has, he likes to change it up. So he has all these great ideas. And I told Mike, we would be walking out on the stage and he'd say, "Hey, Tails." He called me Tails Hoffman. Tails. I mean, Tales for Tales of Hoffman. Um, and he said, "Hey, Tails, let's do a different intro. I'll start on, a D flat minor chord, and then we'll go up half steps, and then you'll." And I'm going, it's so.
Oh, having some connection problems.
Yeah, Wi-Fi is cutting out a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
It's back now.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
We're
Oh, the
back.
system's overloaded or something. Wow.
Well, maybe we're breaking the internet.
Hey, with Ray
Sometimes we
Brown,
do.
okay. Holly Hofmann with
Yeah,
Ray Brown, I'll take it.
yeah, yeah. I truly love the combination between um, your rhythm section people on that record. So, and was there also a specific reason why Bill was on this recording instead of Kenny Barron?
Um, Bill and I were working a lot as a duo, so
Right.
we were working. I think it was a tour actually, and Bill and I were playing duo gigs, and then we just wanted to see how it would work. And then after that time, then Mike took over piano with Ray and Victor, and then
Right.
Victor's on a number of our recordings also.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, he's just Victor Lewis. I don't know, just
Yeah,
one of the drummers
that's
that
that's
stood out.
we played I believe with Mike we played
Live at the
My Old
Athenaeum.
Flame, yeah,
Oh,
at the
yeah,
Athenaeum,
Yeah.
and it's
yeah.
with Victor and Peter Washington. um, and I've seen that on your album. I'm blanking on Minor Miracle. It's that same rhythm section with Victor and Peter Washington. And it's just incredible how, and Victor, in my opinion, also is very very underrated nowadays. But every time when I hear a recording of him, and it's actually funny, I have Sophisticated Giant of Dexter Gordon on vinyl, which has Victor on drums and Frank West also playing flute
Oh, yeah.
on it. And just the way how Victor is so playful, but stays within a certain, like parameter, if you will, but really goes for like the boundaries of how playful he can make it. It's just incredible how he can mix that together with like such a deep sense of swing and time. So
Yeah,
I'm a
he's
little jealous actually of you that you have Victor. I
well,
would want to play with Victor, and I'm a drummer.
yeah, he's special. Well, I've had so many great opportunities to play with great players, and you just learn so much from them. And I tell people in my interviews a lot of times that Mike and I played for 10 years before we were married. and I learned so much from him. And they're all of these people that I had a chance to play with. It's like Mike. I'd say Mike has been making me sound better than I am for years. But because Mike is like glue, that makes the band just, he fills at the right time. He takes me in places that I need to go, that kind of thing. And
Right.
these players are all like that. They brought out so many good things in my playing that I and I learned so much from all of them. I'm just always amazed. Like I said, we during COVID, Mike and I have been listening to our own recordings after not listening to them for years,
Hmm.
and I'm just amazed at the rhythm sections. I mean, I'm a lucky girl.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's a quick question that actually popped up in my mind. I was looking at the mixture of tunes, for example, on your Live at Birdland record, In a Sentimental Moon, Bohemia After Dark, Soul Eyes, Raised Hills, Mood Indigo, Brown Bossa. Um, how do you go about on making a combination of tunes for a record? Do you have like a specific approach that you use for like a studio album? What you did with the Low Life project, or with a live album such as the Birdland record? I'm curious how you go about picking your tunes.
Well, usually they're tunes that I've played for a while, and I hear something in them that I think the audience would enjoy.
Hmm.
One thing I learned from Ray was uh, to stop recording and picking sets on a live gig for for the band, and start thinking about the audience.
Mm.
Hmm.
And he always said, if you're not playing for the audience, you might as well just be playing in your garage. So, a lot of guys, they're trying to impress the band and the musicians, but it's really the audience. And
Right.
he was very adamant about that.
Mm.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
he
True
wanted
words.
jazz, Ray wanted jazz to entertain. And, so they were things that I had played that I thought might contribute to an album. And then I picked a bunch of things on both albums. I picked things um, that I thought I could make something special of, and with these particular players. And then, of course, then you have to sequence them to make them fit together on an album. And um, I I tried to do just a big variety. I think we all do that. Try to make an interesting mix of things
Right.
and stuff that I've played that I really enjoyed playing. I mean, I think you play better when you're playing music you love.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think, Josh, you're nodding your head. You know
I
what I
just
mean.
love that. Everything you're saying right now is
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I was just looking at what Kevin was talking about. All these songs on Low Life are so great. But I love that you recorded this Mulgrew Miller tune, Solio, because I'm a huge Mulgrew fan.
Oh, me too.
And Blood Up, isn't he great? Yeah, I have all his records, and it's not one that's recorded very often. It's just kind of it's a groove tune, but then it's got this great bridge with all these kind of altered
Yep.
harmonic
Yeah.
things happening. But I just loved how Jeff Hammer adapted the groove to his own thing. I recommend people check out the whole album. But it's you're right. It's about the playing songs that make you feel good and entertaining. I mean, John Clayton would talk to me about that when I was working with Sarah Gazarek. Um, just how important it is to be present and entertain the audience and be connected as a band.
Well,
And
I
how
remember when we did that Mike and I did that double duo gig with you and Sarah.
yeah,
That was a special duo too. You guys had a thing that
yeah.
night. I remember Jeff was there
Oh,
listening.
Jeff and John were both there, and knowing you and Mike were there, I was like totally nervous. After the set, I was like, bartender, I need a drink.
I love, I love you and Mike. you and Mike sitting on the piano bench playing four-handed.
Oh,
That was pretty fun.
yeah, that's always going to live on in my memory. So special to me. And for those who missed the Mike Wofford interview that we did, it's up on Kevin's YouTube page, and it's just a great interview. The other kind of side of Holly's world
But
and musical world and otherwise.
when I get the YouTube, I'll send it out on my email list. And I think everybody on my list, I have a huge email list from all the stuff I've booked, here in San Diego.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are going to love this show because, again, it's West Coast talk and artists, and we we uh, we appreciate that. The artists that feel sometimes left out of New York. I mean, it's there's a certain contingent of critics that, as I said before, they don't think a lot goes on out here. And boy, the music and the musicians like yourselves and the people that you interview, I mean, there's a wealth of talent out here.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Which was kind of also the whole idea behind the show, to really show that to everybody out there in the world, what kind of great music comes from this coast, but also from contemporary artists such as yourself and Josh. What kind of music is being made right now in the present day, like
Right.
Josh's Discovery project or your Low Life project. Those are of like it's world class, basically. So
And you've had some real figures in history, in jazz history on your show too.
Yes.
I love hearing Chuck Berghofer talk
Oh,
too.
oh, that
that
episode,
was so
man.
good. We love that, to watch Chuck
Yeah.
listen to those recordings again. And we were kind of like losing our hearts were just kind of aching,
Yeah, yeah,
beautifully
yeah.
aching.
Yeah, because he was almost crying
Yeah.
because he realized that most of those people that we listened to were some of his best friends, and they're not around
I
anymore.
know.
He is one of the last Mohicans.
Yeah, yeah. But I hope you guys keep doing this because, um, as I said, when Mike did his, we got so much response, and people that weren't sending in Facebook messages, but that listened and loved it. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I hope you continue
Oh
on.
yes.
and I bought the I'm spacing on the name, Perk Up, the Shelly
Oh
Man
yeah.
Quintet.
Yeah,
I bought it right after
We played it,
the
right?
episode because we
it's a
played it,
great
and
album.
I listened to it, and I had to get it, and then I got the French concert with Lee Konitz
Oh
as
yeah.
well, that has Mike on it too, because I was like, I need to have this stuff. Because to be honest, I wasn't so familiar with Mike before the episode, and then I do my research and all of that, and I went through the discography, and I was like, oh my goodness, this guy has played with everybody, and you have played with also with so many people. So that's it. To us, it's sort of like a masterclass every
Yeah.
time, and a discovery of new music.
Right.
Because I wasn't very familiar with your albums, and I start to listen to those albums, and I'm like, damn, this is great music.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually, if you would let me, you mentioned about Minor Miracle, which is an original of yours, an original composition. So I would actually love to play that as our final tune, because it has Victor Lewis and Peter Washington, but also Mike on the recording. So I thought that might be a nice culmination of like worlds colliding, basically.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
with that being said, we're going to listen to uh, Minor Miracle, which is also the title track of the recording. Holly Hofmann, Minor Miracle, with Mike Wofford on piano, Peter Washington on bass, and Victor Lewis on drums. Here we go. And it has more of a funky feel. Here we go.
Nice. Great solo as well, Holly. Wow.
Yeah. Really great.
It's, again, the pocket is so big. I don't know how you cannot play with that. I mean, it's just,
Right.
it makes you just want to play and play and play.
Yeah, and dance because it's oh my God.
And Peter Washington,
Oh,
well, we could go on and on about
I
these.
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Well, I think we can finish it up. Holly, on behalf of Josh and myself, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really inspiring and really great to dive into your music and some of your records. And thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and your experiences also with us. So thank you.
I was delighted that you asked, and I had a great time. And Josh, you and I are going to have to do some playing one of these days.
Oh, I would
You have
love
a
that.
gig coming. You have for the flute fans. You have a gig coming up, I think, with Lori, not too maybe next month, huh?
That's right. Yeah, in Orange County at Campus Jacks,
Oh,
Yeah,
and
great.
yeah, and
I've heard about that. It sounds
it's
like
a
a good
nice little
spot.
venue. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the one with Lori's April 15th. It's a
yeah,
Thursday, and they're doing
yeah,
a live stream if you can't make it there. There's a small outdoor audience. They distance everybody and
yeah,
good sound, and
yeah.
Lori's
Good.
fantastic. And yeah, just getting back on the radar slowly with some gigs. You have one in April too that you mentioned, right?
I got one with Gilbert Castellanos
Oh, good.
and Joshua White, and
Ooh, San Diego heroes.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's streamed. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's from a studio, yeah. But yeah. So anyway, anyway, I appreciate the attention to the flute. I mean, it's my heart,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and and it and I don't think I always love it when people bring it to the fore in a jazz setting, like you guys did. Appreciate it
Mm,
a lot.
our
You're very
pleasure.
welcome. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's an instrument that in jazz, as you said, is not talked a lot about, and it's very interesting to dive into that world and see players who actually don't double, such as yourself, and some players who are very good at playing flute, but also double on different kinds of instruments. That's a really interesting topic to talk about. So thank you
Yeah,
once
and
again.
presenting the alto flute in the ways that you have,
Exactly.
which is
Yeah.
not an instrument in jazz for sure. You hear as much. So thank you
People
for.
yell out in my concerts sometimes, play some more alto.
Yeah,
That's a good
it's
thing.
very unique. Yeah, and you play it so beautifully, Holly. Wow,
Thank you, Josh.
thank you.
We'll
Thank
see.
you, Holly. And
Hopefully, next time we see each other, it'll be live,
And we can be a
yes.
hug.
and I can give you a big hug. Yeah. Okay, guys.
And, and for everybody who's out there on Facebook, thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks,
We will
everyone.
be back in 2 weeks again, and we're going to do a Gerald Wilson tribute with Anthony Wilson. So that should be a lot of fun. We're going to
Ooh.
talk and listen to lots of music from the legacy of Gerald Wilson. So we hope that you guys can join us in 2 weeks again. So thanks again, Holly Hoffman, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. And we're off. Okay.
Are we? It says
It
still
says
recording.
I stopped it.